All right, well, from one head coach who's gotten a lot of public criticism to another one who I'm surprised has not gotten more. And we'll move through these last two relatively quickly. But Michigan State with Mel Tucker, I don't understand why the Spartans aren't getting more public flack. Maybe it's because they're not as fun to pile on as a Texas A&M is. They're not as in the national eyes for football. But you've got players facing criminal charges after just assault against Michigan after they lost that rivalry game. Mel Tucker has had one good season after he bailed on Colorado to take money at Michigan State. He had one really good year, got extended, is one of the richest paid coaches in America, and has no skins on the wall, has not done anything really to warrant that. People pile on Jimbo. Jimbo's won a national championship. And yet here's Mel Tucker being paid the same amount of money for one winning season. Last year they go 5-7. I think for me, you watched what that offense did, or rather what they couldn't do, and you realize Kenneth Walker covered up a lot of warts for that offensive scheme. I mean, I've said it for the last 2 years. Peyton Thorne is not a good college quarterback. He's a bus driver, and thankfully his ability to hand it off to Kenneth Walker really propelled that season forward. Last year, you didn't have that, and shocker, your offense was incredibly lethargic. I think they also need conference momentum early. You talk about a team that really needs some early wins. Now they're doing well in recruiting. They've got a big time 5-star David Stone, who's probably going to commit to them this next week on the defensive line. But you can have all the talent in the world, and if you get off to a slow start in conference play, it's really tough to recover. So for me, they've got to find a way, whether it's a new quarterback or just getting wide receivers open. They've got some talent out wide. They've got to find a way to get the ball consistently down the field a little bit more. And then defensively, it was tough sledding. They could not consistently get stops on the ground, through the air. Their pass rush was anemic at times. I think all of that really combined to where you watch the Spartans kind of quit on the back half of that season. For me, that's the first step is you've got to rally the troops and find an identity, find something to commit to throughout this offseason that doesn't allow your guys to check out when you're 2-4, when you're 3-5, and really fighting to save that season.
Yeah, and I think the questions about Mel Tucker's program are fully warranted at this point. You talk about the results on the field, the character concerns with the players that were involved in that altercation, the maybe underlying culture issues, just the fact that Mel Tucker has not been a head coach that long. And he was extended for an ungodly amount of money for one good season on the back of Kenneth Walker. Um, Looking to the future, and I don't want to do too much of a victory lap. I didn't think Michigan State would go 5-7 this year. I thought this was going to be a step back here while they built for 2023, though. And I think 2023 is going to be really interesting because they're bringing in some really good talent. I'm impressed with their recruiting efforts. They're 25th nationally in the composite. Only 15 commits, but 9 of those 15 are are 4 stars. 4 stars or better. So also bringing in some really nice talent in the transfer portal. And if we're talking about
Mhm.
what the fix is for Michigan State, they're going to be a Big Ten team. I don't think that they're ever going to be a team that has an explosive offense with amazing athletes and just, blows people out with an amazing offense. They're going to be a Big Ten team that's built on defense, kind of follows the Michigan model. I know Spartan fans probably don't like me saying that, but your path to success is, the Michigan model with elite defense, solid running game, and doing just enough in the passing game and winning games to the tune of, 28-20 a lot of times.
Mhm.
And that got them a lot of success under Mark D'Antonio. So I'm really impressed with the talent that Tucker's bringing in. I think this could be a nice bounce back year for them. And they're getting creative with bringing talent in, right? Like they signed the number one guy out of Oklahoma. They're going down into the South and getting some athletes that have maybe been looked over by the big dogs down in the SEC or the ACC. So I'm really impressed with the efforts. And Mel Tucker's certainly using those recruiting inroads, but they've got to find somebody that can be at least a competent game manager at quarterback. Thorne's shown that at times, but he's also shown that he really needs an elite running back to be really successful. but they really need somebody that can really drive that bus and maybe even take over a game if the run defense isn't, or if the run offense isn't working. If the run game's not working, can your quarterback make some throws and kind of get the defense off balance? That's what I'm looking for Michigan State. And I think I don't want to say the future is, all sunshine and roses, but I think it's brighter than it looks after a 5-7 year this year.
I would agree with that. I mean, my biggest concern for them really is their defense, and I don't want to get too off topic because obviously, Kenneth Walker being gone was a big issue. It exposed some problems on their offense. I think they're pretty reliant on him. Guys, they gave up 416 yards per game on defense. That's not going to be a winning formula in the Big Ten, no matter who you are. And it really kind of exposes itself when you look into some of the final scores that they had, right? So they held some teams lower at the beginning of the year. They held Western Michigan to 13. They shut out Akron. Cool, congrats. But then you start getting into the more competitive teams. They play Washington at Washington. They lose 39-28. That's a big number. Obviously, we talked about Washington and how good their offense is, but I mean that's a big number. They lost 34-7 to Minnesota. They lose 27-13 to Maryland. They lose 49-20 to Ohio State. And so when you start looking at some of these totals, I start getting concerned about the points they're giving up because if you're not structured to be an explosive offense in the Big Ten, you can't allow yourself to get down. I mean, we even saw what Ohio State struggled with against Michigan when they got down in a game, just because of how good some of these defenses can be and how in the Big Ten you start to get down and teams can bury you just with how physical the defense can be. We I think need to focus a little bit more for Michigan State on how do we start to get off the field, stop drives from just going on forever, stop guys from running up scores on us. Let's not get in some 10 to 14 point holes so that our maybe not so explosive offense can afford to, put some drives together, get some points on the board, kick a couple field goals and keep us in a game, even if we're a little outmatched or the other team has, a really good quarterback or something. Let's get ourselves in a position to stay competitive through the end of the game so we don't just kind of throw our hands up and say, well, we can't do this anymore, right? And I don't want to, blast on the character concerns. Obviously all the Michigan State fans are going to point to Michigan's defensive lineman and what he did, but that is a bit of a problem. I don't want to blast him for it. I know that it's not every single program, but that was kind of an issue. We talked about it obviously when it happened, but you got to kind of question yourself. Was it more to do with the program overall, or was it just kind of what happened that night and the fact that that was kind of a reflection of how their season was going, right? That night, they couldn't do anything on offense. They got stifled on offense, and their defense couldn't get off the field. That's really what it came down to is Michigan, they kicked a lot of field goals in that game, right? But it came on extended drives, and it came on long possessions. And so for me, when I'm looking at this, if you're Michigan State, that's a frustrating, demoralizing thing to a team. You got to find a way to get off the field. You got to find a way to stop these extended drives from happening, or else you're not going to have any success against efficient, explosive offenses like Ohio State and maybe more of a Michigan when you have more of these, sort of advanced offenses that do that. You're not going to have any success there, and you're definitely not going to have any success when you go up against your out-of-conference foes and things like that if you have ambitions towards a playoff and, bigger bowl games and things like that. It's not a recipe for success.
Well, I'm interested to see what Michigan State's role is in the new Big Ten, especially as USC, maybe UCLA join in a couple of years as well. There's no doubt they've fallen several steps behind Ohio State and Penn State. What's the new look Wisconsin going to be like? What is Iowa going to look like with a competent quarterback? How does Minnesota continue to progress? Is Illinois for real? I mean, you could see Michigan State backsliding very, very easily if they don't start to fix some of these things. I think it's certainly Mel Tucker's not going to go anywhere because of that contract, but it's kind of the frog boiling the frog situation. If you boil the frog while they're in the pot, they don't realize they're being cooked until it's too late. If Mel Tucker doesn't start to figure some things out, I mean, he's going to find himself in the cellar of the Big Ten very, very quickly.
Gracious,